Breaking news in the CBS Sports HQ, the 2022 National Baseball Hall of Fame class has been announced, and it is a field of one. Big Papi, David Ortiz, the only player on the ballot this season that the writers saw fit of enshrinement. The three-time World Series champ, just one of 4 players in the history of the game with 500 home runs and 3 titles, and will now forever be enshrined in Cooperstown. Meanwhile, Alex Rodriguez fell well short of the 75% voting requirement in his first year of eligibility, while players like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Curt Schilling all missed in their final year of voting eligibility. There's a look at Papi's resume, and it is one that cannot be encompassed by one play, one moment, one board. He has meant so much to a city, a team, a franchise, and he is headed to Cooperstown. And we got you covered from the front office to the field. Here with their instant reaction, we say hello to MLB insider David Samson and our resident Bosock himself, Will Middlebrooks. Gentlemen, I'm just going to roll the ball out here first. We'll go your way, David. General reaction to this class of one. It seemed like leading up to it, it was going to be one or none. Any surprise here for you?
No, not at all. The Hall of Fame could not afford to put 0 people into the class. The revenue comes from that weekend, and Big Papi's going to draw a lot of people. He just got in at 77.9%. He is a Hall of Famer, Will. Before we start arguing, to me, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but given where we are in terms of the world, you had to put him in now. As for Bonds and Clemens, we can debate all we want, but they're now off the ballot forever. They are in the hands of veterans committees and players committees, but it's over for them with the writers, as well it should be.
So I obviously have mixed feelings here. I'm super happy. I'm fired up for a friend, an ex-teammate, somewhat of a big brother type. When I got to the big leagues, David Ortiz was who put his big burly arm around me and said, "Come with me, kid. I'm going to show you how things work here." So this means a lot to me in that case. And then you do look at his career and how clutch he was. 3 World Series, and over 3 World Series, he hit 455 with almost a 600
look at that
base. Look at that kid. Look at him. There's that
literally putting his arm around you.
Literally, that's it. I mean, that's who he was, not just with me, but with everyone else. He's larger than life, as you know. But just like I said, I think one of the best DHs of all time, right there with Edgar Martinez. With him going in 2019, knocking that barrier down for DHs because the WAR is not there. He didn't play defense. He's not the complete player. I get that. But one of the most feared hitters of all time, one of the most clutch hitters of all time. Great leader, great teammate.
Before we dig into some of those names that did not make enshrinement here, we got to get a little bit more of that inside experience when it comes to Will and being there with the arm around you. Was there a moment that we were not privileged to? I mean, we saw all the moments on field, you guys hugging at home plate, but was there a moment that we didn't see that you look across the clubhouse and said, man, I'm playing with a future Hall of Famer right now?
Every day. I mean, if there's one story that sticks out to me, it was Game 2 of the 2013 World Series. We're in Boston. We're facing Michael Wacha, who I grew up with in Texarkana, small world. He's a high velo fastball, good changeup, and he gets Papi out a couple times, gets him out front on the changeup a couple times. And David came in. I wasn't playing, and he came in and said, "If he throws me that changeup again, I'm gonna hit it out." But not only did he say I'm gonna hit it out, I'm gonna hit it out over the monster. I was thinking, all right, that's pretty specific, but I put nothing past David Ortiz. So he goes up his next at bat. He's dead on 97, fouls it straight back. And I'm looking over like, how's he sitting changeup if he's on 97, right? Couple pitches later, boom, changeup over the monster. He comes in the dugout, puts his arm around me once again and says, "Hey kid, I'm a lot of things, but a liar ain't one of them."
Fantastic stuff and a fantastic resume here. I mean, 3-time World Series champ, 2004 ALCS MVP, 2013 World Series MVP, Red Sox single home run record. Again, that list of just 4 players and unbelievable names that he's on that list with 500 home runs and 3 or more championships. We do have to address some of the Mars and some of the knocks on the resume. There was the positive test in 2003, allegedly. Name did come up on the Mitchell report in 2009. I guess I'd ask it this way, David. Does this vote represent a warming of the baseball writers to opening the hall to further tainted or questioned resumes? Or like you said, is this just a perfect intersection of the player and the time?
Well, remember, people's view of David Ortiz is him with Will Middlebrooks sitting in their room at night on the road, dialing 9, ordering room service like they're on a cruise ship called the Sea Dream, right? It's this fantasy of how great he was, and I'm all in. He is a Hall of Fame type player, but this was the perfect year for him to get in and now be known forever as a first ballot Hall of Famer. The difference is when David Ortiz supposedly was on a list, that is when we were just beginning to see if we were going to test for steroids. They were sample tests, and if there were a certain number of players who were positive, then there would be a testing system put into place. But nothing was supposed to be leaked. Of course, things got leaked. But in an unprecedented manner, the commissioner of baseball, Rob Manfred, told the writers, we don't know whether David Ortiz's test was positive, negative, false negative. Don't put him in the same boat as people like Clemens, people like Bonds, Sosa, McGuire. So Ortiz got separated. And then you put him on a ballot like this year's ballot, and people get confused. Is this vote about saying it's okay for steroids? Not at all. The writers had a way to excuse that 2003 moment and look at the totality of his resume, and that's why he's a Hall of Famer.
And I just want to add to that, David. He played 13 more seasons and was never popped, not once. And that was the bulk of his career. Before 2003, his numbers weren't crazy. Now, after that, we know what he did. We see the numbers, we see the resume. I played with him for 3 seasons, and I never saw another player get tested even half as much as David Ortiz. They were on him. They tested him a lot. I saw him multiple times, 3 times in 1 week be tested. And it's supposed to be a random test, but it's always when he's winning AL Player of the Week or he's homered 5 times that week. So call it random if you will. But he was tested more than any player I ever played with.
Well, you make a great point there, and it's almost eerie the way it parallels another Boston legend in Tom Brady, almost a career in 2 acts with a little lull in the middle, but the sustained success and greatness is something to admire. We have to talk about this idea of likability and how that weighs into the vote here. We're going to look at all the numbers here in a moment, but A-Rod numbers indicate that something going to need to drastically change over the next decade for him to be enshrined. How much does likability, in your eyes, Will, play into these votes?
It plays into it. I mean, unfortunately, there's still humans making these votes. And as we know with Barry Bonds, he wasn't very nice to people. People remember that. That's not supposed to play into this, but it does. And I think A-Rod has done a very good job of changing how the public eye sees him. I do agree with that. He's done a great job with that. I think his votes will continually get higher and higher. Gosh, I can't even tell you if I think he'll get in or not. I don't. I think the player is there, the back of the baseball card is there, but
there's a but. There's a but.
Yes, there's a but. There's an asterisk. You can say that. I mean, he's come clean, and David and I we talked about this with PEDs before. Just don't lie about it, he says. Well, A-Rod came out, he came clean, he said he did it. Does that okay it? Does that mean he gets a pass? Who knows?
I'll say it now, and I'll say it for 10 more years. There is 0 chance Alex Rodriguez will be voted into the Hall of Fame by the Baseball Writers Association. 0. Alex Rodriguez can go to as many Packers games as he wants. He can do his side cast during Sunday Night Baseball. He can date Jennifer Lopez's daughter, son, mother, father. I don't care what he does. There is no way. Alex Rodriguez embodies steroids, lying, covering up. Don't forget the lawsuits he was involved with Major League Baseball. All of this reclamation projects, it's simply a bunch of horse hockey that will not work. This 34%, it'll creep up. It'll be 36, 38. You'll hear from some young writers who say, once the old curmudgeons are out and I've got my vote, I'm going to vote for him. He's never going to get to 75%.
David Samson, just let A-Rod know that it's nothing personal as well, because there are no half measures with our guy David Samson. I'm sure he has plenty more to say on the pod coming up, but it also begs the question here, guys. You mentioned the Veterans Committee, and we do have a number of names getting in via the Veterans Committee this go-around as well. David, do you believe we could ever see a different committee to reference back to the steroid era and all the greatness that we saw, tainted as it is? Could you see a steroid committee, or is this all in the hands of the Veterans Committee to address this the way they need to with these names that are now beyond the 10-year limit?
Well, they split the committees now. There's 3 of them that deal with older players and then sort of older players and then more recent players. So the fact is that Bonds and Schilling and Clemens and Sosa and McGuire, they can all be considered really as early as next year. And that's a committee made up not of writers, but of players, executives, etc. But it's just as hard to get the vote for that as Marvin Miller and his family will tell you. So I don't think that that guarantees success at all, because generally those committees are meant to find mistakes. They're meant to find oversights. Someone like a Jim Cott, who may be looking back, you look at his career and you say, you know what, that is a Hall of Fame player. There is no dispute about the type of career that Bonds had and Clemens had. It's a Hall of Fame quote-unquote career if you look at the back of the baseball card. But you heard what the writers have to consider, and the committees do too. There is integrity. There is character. It's not that it's likability. It's the way the players were, not just in the clubhouse, but in terms of their overall way, how they respected the game. And Will, you and I can debate long into the night about Bud Selig and why he's in the Hall of Fame. He's not in the Hall of Fame because he covered up steroids. He's in the Hall of Fame because he's one of 9 men in history to lead the great game of baseball. And I would argue that every commissioner should be in the Hall of Fame, and Rob Manfred will be on his way there as well. But that said, it's a great day for David Ortiz. And one more thing, guys. Don't take away from David's night tonight. Big Papi should get all of the recognition. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I hope people don't spend their time talking about Bonds and Clemens and Sosa and all the losers who didn't get in. Spend your time focused on David Ortiz, what he's meant to baseball, what he's meant to the entire country, not just the Dominican, but the United States as a teammate, and what it meant to be a fan of David Ortiz of the Boston Red Sox. Congratulations to Big Papi.
This is our city. No better way to say it than that. I will end with this, gentlemen, because we do have to have those conversations about the other players. Maybe tonight is not the time for it, but I want to end with this. An open letter to the Baseball Writers of America. Will, you lead us off. What does it read?
Man, well, you got it right with David Ortiz. And I know I'm biased. I know he's here with me right now. But listen, and this is where David and I will continually, forever disagree. I think Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer. I think they failed by not putting him in. That's my personal opinion, which means absolutely nothing. But if you dig into that and you look at 1998, when supposedly he started, that's when the narrative says he started steroids. That's when he got to the 400 club. No other player has ever done that. He got to that in 1998. I think he's a Hall of Fame player. Is it tainted? Yes, it is. By rule, yes, it is. I still think he's a Hall of Famer. I think they failed miserably by not putting Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame.
And David, your message would be?
Dear writers, thank you for taking this so seriously as millions of fans and people who think they deserve a vote try to do your job for you and tell you why you did it so incorrectly. Thank you for examining the totality of a person and player's resume, for understanding what it means in today's world to have someone inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Thank you for lowering Curt Schilling's percentage and making people understand that words have consequences and actions have consequences.
And those two opinions, well, you got to love David in there. You know, you got to let him know you love him. Gentlemen, that is the beauty of our platform, those differing opinions and the fact that we get to flesh it out here on HQ. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, let's look at the numbers. 2022 Hall of Fame voting results. The only one over that meridian, David Ortiz, 77.9% of the vote. Barry Bonds next closest at 66, falls 9% shy of enshrinement into the Hall of Fame. Behind him, slightly by 0.8, Roger Clemens, Scott Rowland. Curt Schilling, who requested to be removed from this year's ballot, was denied that request, was 16 votes shy of enshrinement last season. And you could see the message resounding from the Baseball Writers of America as Schilling drops all the way to 58.6.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.